Today we're talking with Mark Wilson, and he's the principal of Strategic Technology Bioconsulting, and he has experience for already over 20 years. We're very happy to have him here, and I think it's very special because as our first source, we have, as a first resource, we have an interesting perspective that's not necessarily from someone from procurement, but someone who's actually from the innovation side. So thank you very much for joining us, Mark. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, no, that's great. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. So my background is 20 to 25 years in a large pharmaceutical company at GlaxoSmithKline, mainly in alliance management and business development roles, and for several years acting as a gatekeeper, in effect, for technologies coming into the company. And as part of that time, I spent several years in the venture capital group, SO1, and was responsible for divesting and out-licensing technologies. For the last 7 or 8 years, and relevant to this conversation, I've been working with medtech and biotech companies across Europe on business development, strategy, fundraising, and I'd really like to share some perspectives from the innovator company side in interacting with public systems. Thank you.
Yes, and I think this is really great. So we have our whole learning resources are about starting the journey within public procurement. So I think as someone who's from the innovator side, this is super useful. And can you maybe explain to us if there were a few things that you have to mention that were the that are key learning points or key starter points for people who want to start? What would you argue would be the most important?
Yes, thank you. So maybe there are a couple of points. I mean, I think the first is that establishing the right contact points, set of contact points is really important. So in most ecosystems that I've seen, and having had the chance to work in different places in Europe, I think there are often link organizations or key groups or key organizations that actually can help you. So an example I would make in the UK is a set of academic health science networks. These are groups that are meant to bring innovation into the NHS. And really, this is it's a natural business development process. So it's important not just to write to people, but to go to meetings to find out who has certain interests and to actually, build some rapport and connections with the individuals who can really help. But I think in every ecosystem I've seen, there have been groups working to fulfill that role. In the UK, there are a number of programs. We have the NHS Innovation Accelerator, which I would say is more formal and national. And there are a whole series of schemes that a body called NIHR, National Institute of Health and Care Research, funds and sponsors. At the end of the day, it's about finding the contacts that can help. And so again, I encourage people to sort of understand the ecosystem, to really engage on a personal level and to find maybe the relatively senior people in these organizations who can, make connections, make introductions. Again, everyone in this field is motivated by improving healthcare, improving patient outcomes. And I think it's a business development task to find those individuals. The second point I think I'd like to make is that I see huge benefit from regional schemes. And I think if you're in a small company, it's natural to think about sort of addressing a national system. And actually, sometimes, I would say particularly in medtech, it's very effective to engage with sort of regional accelerators, regional mentoring programs. Again, there are often people there to help. And particularly if you have a great approach to great technology that can really help people, that there are people who are willing to support and help push you forward. And I encourage people to be a little bit brave. It's obviously natural to work in your own geography and your own environment. But as one example, I'm working with a Finnish company that has actually activity in the UK, and that's been really helpful. And they've got great level of support. So actually, this willingness to kind of look internationally and look abroad for people who can help is something that I think we should all encourage.
Thank you very much. So I think we already captured multiple points about both where to start, but also what kind of capabilities or capacities you more or less need in terms of being brave and making connections. What would you say would be the most challenging thing?
So I think there are a couple of points here. One is that there's a real need in the public systems for evidence. And if you're in a small company, you know, you're pushing uphill, pushing water uphill. You're trying to find the resources, find the funding, get through the development program. And I think it's easy to underestimate the evidence need or the evidence thirst for the public system. So it's not just a matter of having the right regulatory approval or having conducted the right clinical trial. It's ongoing user feedback, user data. And I think the really successful companies are those that continue to build that evidence base over time. And so they really engage. And that in itself is very positive. But I think there's this need for a continuing feed of evidence in the public system. An additional point is that this can be a slow process. You know, it is difficult often to find the right contact points for procurement, even for an early discussion. So again, encourage people to try and be introduced wherever possible, try and have an early exploratory discussion, but then to understand the needs of the procurement professionals and to go with the right evidence pack at the right time. But it is a long and can be a challenging process. But I think from my perspective, it's understanding the needs and the timeline, and in particular, this critical point around evidence.
Very interesting. I think in the first point, in terms of what are key learning points, I heard you mention saying be brave. Then now again, you mentioned mindset. Do you think the way to start mostly relates to that, to having the right mindset and trying to build the right connections?
Yeah, and I think there's often a slight mismatch between sort of the procurement world and sort of a small med tech company, often highly innovative. So what we sort of need is this mutual understanding. You know, so it's easy to, if you're in a small company, to sort of not quite understand what the needs of a procurement group, you know, are, and understand what's going on, what are the drivers, what are the internal processes. So again, as with other sort of elements of business development, early exploratory conversations are very helpful. And if you know, it can be difficult if you knock on the front door, you know, often there's no response. But if a friendly contact can introduce you, you know, often there can be some guidance around what are the requirements in a particular domain, in a particular type of activity, to get a real discussion, even if that's early, around potential procurement. So it's sort of, I know, easily said, yet it's difficult to do, but I actually think this is a sort of business development process, and actually it is quite personal. We think of systems and we think of frameworks, but actually people still need to sort of know that something is available. They need to sort of feeling around the quality and the integrity of the people that are bringing that, you know, and these are personal processes to some degree. So if we can get through those, then we move into the, you know, more formulaic assessment, scoring, evaluation, contracting type activity. But I think initially these contacts can be really huge, you know, hugely useful in opening doors. And so a key challenge is often figuring who in a particular environment, you know, is willing to help and able to help. But I often think there are people.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think one thing to add from this, from the perspective of InnoHSupport and from our project, is also indeed that there are many, as you said as well in your already previously, there are many of these projects available. For example, in our project as well, we have these networks that are being built to support this. So I think very, very valid point. Thank you. Maybe as a last question, what would be the starting point? Are there any sources that you can recommend that people to have a look at, or what would you suggest to them for people who say, I want to start today or tomorrow?
So I mean, it's always good to start locally, but people probably know who in the local environment is actually conducting these activities. So again, go and discuss and see what resources they have available. Again, I encourage people to make kind of early approaches internationally. There's a thirst for innovation and for bringing the right technologies in. So, and an early conversation is not a difficult thing. It's not a sales conversation. It's understanding a potential need. So it's accessing those groups. Of note, though, there was a report produced in the UK called Achieving Scale and Speed by the Nuffield Trust on behalf of the NHS. And I think it's a really nice sort of 30-40 page run through of the challenges on both sides for procurement, for systems, but also for innovator companies in making these connections and stepping through this process. So that's perhaps a particular resource I would recommend, and that's freely available online.
Thank you very much. I think we've captured a lot of points for people to get started with, and very nice introduction to your perspective. Are there any other questions from the others? Yes,
maybe yes. You've got a long experience with healthcare procurement officers looking for innovations. What's your experience with dealing with healthcare procurement of innovation officers? What are they? Well, you're very kind, but what are they lacking? So what would you advise them? Because that's something that we offer in our projects, in our curriculum, and that we offer in the project to address this kind of gaps.
So I think what I've seen in really good regional schemes is this sort of bringing together of people. So we were kind of talking really about the small company side and the innovator company trying to get a technology adopted. And I suggested that there's perhaps a need to really understand the drivers in a work environment on the procurement individuals, procurement teams. So perhaps similarly, we need to bring people together. So perhaps there is in a very busy, pressured environment, perhaps there is a need for procurement individuals, or perhaps there's an opportunity to share an understanding a little bit around the nature of SMEs and how those organizations operate, and why they may have fantastic technology with good data, but perhaps not in the perfect form or the perfect package or extensive enough yet to be brought into a particular health system. So I think perhaps there is a little bit of work we could maybe do, maybe just share a little bit of understanding around the nature of drivers and difficulties on both sides.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark, for very insightful thoughts. I think this we can conclude here. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you also in our next learning resource.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Thank you.